All right, let's jump to the loaded AFC West. We'll start with the Chiefs. Their win totals 10.5, minus 120 to the over, plus 100 to the under. They were the luckiest team in terms of missed games due to injury last year, which is interesting.
They were lucky in every department.
Yeah, which is interesting because it was also the first time in 9 years as head coach of the Chiefs that Andy Reid did not lead this team over their preseason win total. So now the division's obviously loaded. You add in Russell Wilson. I think the Raiders are going to be better than people expect. We can talk about that in a bit. I still have the Chiefs favored in, I think, 10 or 11 games, but there's a lot of close ones there. So that could kind of go either way. They had 11.2 Pythagorean wins last year. So, what do you think of the Chiefs? Some people will say, Andy Reid always goes over and they just kind of bet him for that reason. But how do you think they're going to adjust to life after Tyreek?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they adjust. And it felt like they were unlucky with turnovers early in the year. But yeah, they definitely got health. They were injury luck. They enjoyed some injury luck for sure, which they can't afford to have. But they're well coached, and I expect the Chiefs to make some adjustments offensively. That the league has kind of adjusted them. Mahomes is still arguably the best quarterback in the league. If not, you can't argue he's not top three. And the statistics bore that out last year. Now, there were some struggles. The league has kind of adjusted. Now you don't have Tyreek Hill to kind of take the top off. But, you added – we'll see what Scantling can do. And then, you added Sky Moore in the draft. So –
Juju.
Juju you add. So there's these they're like receivers that have potential, but there's more question marks. So we'll see. And obviously you still have Kelsey. You got to really love the offensive line. They just had some excellent draft picks with some young guys who'd only get better. And then Orlando Brown at left tackle, he only started to get better after coming over from Baltimore and then adjusting kind of to the scheme change. So yeah, it should be one of the best offenses in the NFL. Once again, the questions for me all come on the defensive side of the ball, as always. And, what did they really do to address the defense? Nothing. You're going to be hoping a rookie can help you at corner. Good luck. You lose Honey Badger. It was just so important to them in so many ways. At least Sorensen won't be on the field anymore. I guess that's the only positive I can give, but how's this team getting pressure? How are they stopping the run? The secondary's worse. Are you like this, Dave?
No, I was going to say, I think they have at least some upside in terms of the pressure department. They got Dunlap, they got, who's their rookie? Karlaftis. And, they still have Jones on the inside. Clark obviously needs to step it up.
Clark is awful.
Yeah, he's
done.
Yeah,
he doesn't do anything.
Now you have
like a couple flash plays, but
now you have Dunlop, which I think there was a few years in there when the linebackers were awful. I think it'll be a little better. I like Gay. I like Jarius Sneed too as well. So I think but
you lost Ward, you lost Honey Badger.
Those are two of their best players. Yeah, those are two of your best players.
And then you're talking about guys you kind of like. I agree. I like Gay. And I actually like Thornhill and Sneed, but it's like you're replacing Honey Badger with Justin Reed.
Yeah.
You're replacing Ward with a rookie. This defense is gonna be bad again. Doesn't mean they can't win a lot of games, but the AFC is tougher. And I have the Chiefs with the hardest schedule in the NFL. I project them 10.3. But their defense might be worse than I think. It might end up being closer to 10. I got to take a deeper dive, look into their defense. But I would lean under, but not enough to play it. I do think that there's value in Pacheco. You got to mention Pacheco. Maybe has looked awesome. But the Rutgers boy. But yeah, I would lean under here, but I'm going to attack the Chiefs in another way. And that's and by the way, one of the games I have them like favored in is like the Bills at home, and I love the Bills in that spot. It's a I mean, first of all, their division is loaded. And I think the Chiefs probably got a little worse, and they might have some negative regression coming. So I think their defense got worse, and then you lose Tyreek Hill. So, yeah, and then you don't get to face the 2 free wins and 50 free points in both games against the Raiders this year.
Yeah.
With their coaching changes. But, you start out at Arizona. I actually liked them in that game. Talk about a coaching mismatch. I mean, just the schedule. And Chargers, at Colts, at Bucks, home against the Raiders, home against the Bills, at San Fran, home against the Titans, home against the Jags. There's a little break. And then it's at Chargers, Rams, at Bengals, at Broncos.
Yeah.
It's nonstop. At the back end of the schedule, you get the Texans and Seahawks, but it's the hardest schedule in the NFL. It's loaded, and you're in the AFC. The defense is going to be bad. They're going to have to win shootouts and stay healthy on the offensive side of the ball. But I actually think the Chargers have a better overall roster now, and they have an easier schedule, and they don't have quite as good of a home field advantage. But I actually think there's value in the Chargers to win the division.
Yeah, the Chiefs, I mean, like you pointed out, they have 3 gimmies on the schedule this year versus Jacksonville in week 10, at Houston in week 15, and versus Seattle in week 16. Outside of that, I mean, every game is going to be tough. The Chiefs are obviously have one of the best quarterbacks and coaches in the league, but you're talking about essentially coin flip games versus a lot of quality teams, or just, in the division, even the Raiders, who are the, projected to be the worst team in the division, they're not an easy out anymore for the Chiefs, especially, as you mentioned, without Gus Bradley just, playing that same exact cover 3 every single time that the Chiefs just eat up. So, yeah, I can't find, I know Andy Reid does this every year and the total has come down, but I think it's rightfully come down. Just a lot of variance in terms of, the Chiefs will be good, but that doesn't mean they win 11 games. That doesn't mean they win 12 games. They could be good and still end up unlucky, end up with like a 9-8 record. So I wouldn't touch the over for them.
I think I have a favorite in let's see. Yes, I have a favorite in 13 games, 7 by less than a field goal.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a lot of coin flips up in there. Let's talk about the Chargers. Their win total is 10. It's juiced to the over at -140. So you're talking more like 10-3. And this is a team that I have favored. I just about the same amount of games as the Chiefs, but same thing. I have 11 games where they are, they have a field goal or less spread, and their favorite. I have them favored in 7 of those games. I pick them in 3 more. So, talk about their roster, because I know Jackson now is going to miss maybe the opener in a couple of weeks, but I did like what they did getting Jackson. I think he's such an impact player, was so massive to what New England was able to do on defense. And you get Khalil Mack, the offense, we know they're going to be good. The line should be good. So why do you like this Charger team so much?
Yeah, I love this team. You can make the case that they have the best roster in the NFL. We'll see that there's some pieces that have to come together. So they're not as, I think the Bills are more of a known commodity, but what the Chargers did and what they flashed last year, and they were a bit unlucky overall. They finally do have a kicker. You still worry about their special teams, but they went out and they signed 12 free agents to contracts worth over $150 million to rebuild to address some of the holes on the roster. Then they traded for Khalil Mack and then drafted Zion Johnson, who's looked great, to address one of the guard positions. Offensive line's been a major weakness. Now, not the case. The only real weakness, if you look at this, the defense last year was the problem. And, the defensive line, you still have some questions about in the interior, but everywhere else, you have to love what they did. Adding JC Jackson is enormous. And, you add Bryce Callahan in the slot, you have Derwin James, one of the best safeties in the NFL. There's, you added Khalil Mack to help off at the edge, by the way, of Joey Bosa still there. So they really shored up the defense. I think the offensive line will be a lot better. And, I think they upgraded at tight end. Herbert should only continue to get better. The only weakness on this roster, defensive line is something to monitor, and the run defense has really been an issue. But the right tackle, and I mean, Storm Norton stinks. I hope Trey Pipkins, I think they're going to name a starter there and soon. I hope he wins the job because I think he has better upside. They've been splitting reps, but they've really gone out, and I mean, Rashawn Slater is a stud at left tackle, and they've addressed a lot of the holes on this roster. I think it's arguably the best overall roster in the NFL, and I like them. I don't think that there should be that much of a discrepancy as there is in the division compared to the Chiefs. I actually have them. Let's see. I project the Chargers, to win more games. They have this. They still have a hard schedule, but they have like the 8th hardest schedule instead of the Chiefs, which is the 1st. I project the Chargers to win more games, even with a depressed home field advantage, which is dwindling across the board anyway. But yeah, I think that there's some value in the Chargers to win the division. I threw a little bit on it. I'm a little afraid of the cannibalization in the division. It's just so brutal. But I think the Chargers actually should be favored, believe it or not.
Yeah, they're plus 220. I think it's such a loaded division that personally, I prefer like a team like the Vikings or the Eagles that, they're kind of in that same range, but it's kind of more of a 2-man race. The downside with the Chargers is I think it's actually a 4-team race, but I agree. I love the roster. I think Herbert is an absolute stud. I think Staley is not going to always get, credit by the media, depending where you fall on like the analytics spectrum, but I like, he's adding win probability with a lot of the decisions he's making on the offensive side of the ball and that's great.
I'm a fan.
Yeah. So it's a good team. Real quick, because I know people listening are probably going to ask us this on Twitter. What are you going into week 1 with your baseline home field advantage? Because you mentioned it's dwindling, and I know people are going to be like, have questions about that.
Yeah, I still might be too high, but my overall average is just over 1.1 points for home field advantage. Now, I should mention there are times this is more situational, but home field advantage does not mean as much in division games historically. So I have an adjustment for that. Teams are more familiar with where they're playing, where they're traveling to, which matters. And then you obviously do it every year and familiar with those teams. Travel also impacts it. And then there's obviously different range of home field advantages with like you're going to have the Saints and the Chiefs and the Seahawks. And then obviously the Broncos have the highest because the altitude are up over 1.5. And then you have teams like the, Washington, the Chargers, which are under 1.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks. I just wanted to make sure we get that in there because I know people.
It's hard to figure. It's hard to adjust those things because it's like there's so much noise. In those results, and you had the COVID year thrown in there.
Yes, I was just gonna say that the COVID year was crazy, just from like a lot of different perspectives, to where you almost have to like not throw it out in the sense of like the players, but some of the baselines like just completely changed. There was so much more offense that year. Totals went crazy. Like it
makes sense. I basically what I'm doing is just monitoring all the data, and then I've been slowly reducing home field advantage across the board. Each year. And sometimes I think I'm not doing it aggressively enough, but that's the approach I'm taking in, and I evaluate. I'll actually take a look before the season again, a deeper dive, but that's where I'm at right now. But happy to hear anyone's thoughts on it because it's definitely up for debate.
No, I mean, that's generally the range I'm into. It's not much higher than 1 anymore. It used to be, closer to, high 1s, 2, and then it's really come down over these last few years. But let's finish it out. We got the Broncos and the Raiders to talk about. Broncos. Win total was 10, minus 110 on both sides of that. They were unlucky with injuries last year, 5th most games lost, adjusted according to Football Outsiders. They get Russell Wilson from the Seahawks. I think that, it works not only because you're massive upgraded quarterback, but I think Sutton in particular needs a quarterback like Wilson. So it's good to hear that they're having a good camp, in terms of their chemistry that's building. I only have them favored in 9 games. I have another 4 as a pick 'em, and then there's obviously some close games even in the 9. So it's a tough division where they're they're probably the third best team realistically. I think their roster is pretty strong as well, but these teams are really going to beat up on each other. So I'm not going under on the Broncos, but I would not go over either. But what are your thoughts with this, with Russ in tow?
Yeah, I still have questions about, there's still some questions on this roster. I still have questions about the offensive line. On defense, the cornerback situation is fairly underwhelming. I did like the addition of Randy Gregory up front, but there's, some potential holes on this defense and along the offensive line. Really good team, obviously really tough schedule. It's going to come down to what Russ can provide. That's kind of I project them right at 10 wins. I think what's their implied 9-8, 9-9.
Yeah.
So I don't see any value either way. I do think that they're the third best team in the division. That's where I've empowered rated. They're a step behind the Chiefs and Chargers. I'm curious to get your thoughts. I'm flaky with this, but depends on which side of the bed I wake up on. But with Russell Wilson, he obviously last year, he has a thumb injury, and then it obviously appeared like he came back way too early and he was awful. And then he kind of looked like himself right before the end of the year, but he's going to be 34 this year. And he's different than like Brady, right? In the sense that he's not just taking a snap and then sitting in the pocket and working. The reason why Russell Wilson probably won't age as well. It's always been probably one of the best, most accurate deep balls in NFL history, but his legs have always been, and his creativity, part of that has to do with his size, but he also just is extremely athletic. It can use that to his advantage. So that is going to start to diminish at some point. So when do we start to see that? So last year, was that just all injury and now he's healthy? And then I just assume that we're still at peak Russ from 2 years ago and the Russ that we've seen forever, or should I build in all right, he's still obviously an enormous upgrade over what the Denver quarterback situation has been. But that's kind of that'll maybe be the difference between Denver potentially missing the playoffs. They're going to be really good regardless, but it's the AFC. You win 10 games and miss the playoffs this year, or being a legit Super Bowl threat. Is that Russ ceiling still where it was? You have any thoughts on that? It's a hard question.
Yeah, I think it is. Just historically, quarterback aging curves, they're a lot more gradual than, obviously you can't really compare anyone to Tom Brady, but he still averaged 8.4 adjusted yards per attempt last year. That was, that's actually 0.2 above his career average of 8.2. And I really think that he was held back in that scheme in Seattle,
by the play calling.
Yeah, by the play calling, because it's, not even just the offensive coordinators. Obviously, they had different ones that all came under fire, but Pete Carroll just, he's a run first coach. That's what his philosophy is. And a lot of times what you would see with Wilson is he would just feel like he had to maximize every opportunity that he had to pass. So he would, he's the best deep ball thrower in the league, arguably, but he would still, there would be some ill-advised decisions there. He'd be chucking it deep on 3rd and 5 after 2 runs. And it wasn't a good situation. So, he now he's at a destination where I'm sure, in acquiring him, they kind of gave him some assurances that they're going to run offense a little bit more to how he would like to run offense. And, you also look at Seattle's, and this has been a trend with them. They're blocking. Their O-line hasn't been good. They were 7th. They graded out 7th worst last year. Denver graded out 9th best. And just looking at the line, I mean, it should be solid across the boards. It's not spectacular, but I think he's going to get better protection. Slight, a downgrade at wide receiver unless Judy really breaks out and Sutton returns to form. But I think he fits really well with Sutton. I like this rookie kid, Washington. I think he ends up winning that job in the slot over KJ Hamler. And this team, I think Russ is going to be fine, is what I'm saying. I don't think he'll be the reason why Denver doesn't go as far as they could go this year. I think, like you said, it probably will more have to do with, can the defense stay healthy? Can Chubb, stay healthy form a pair with Gregory. You know, what are you going to get out of the cornerbacks? You know, we know Surtain is probably going to be good, but what can you get out of Darby and Williams? So I think that's really the questions more so than Russ. I think Russ will be fine. Although the depth at receiver is getting a little thin now with, you know, no Tim Patrick. But like I said, out, yeah. I do like Okwuegbunam, one of the, you know, in terms of tight ends, gets targeted. Was targeted about 24% of his routes last year. So he gets open at that position. And like I said, I think this kid Montrell Washington, is actually going to give them another element. And people probably don't know much about him, but I think he's going to play well. So if they can keep Jeudy and Sutton healthy, I think they'll be fine. The running game should be good with Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon. So you have everything kind of in place for Russ to have success on offense. I think it's, you know, defense without Fangio, how high is the ceiling now? I think that's really more of the question.
Yeah, I think the defense definitely takes a step back. By the way, that was very well pronounced by you. I'm not even going to try because I always just say Alberto. And by the way, I think I might have said Darius Leonard.
Shaquille. It's Shaquille now.
Yeah, it's Shaquille now. And which like no one knew. And he said he didn't even never wanted to bring it up the other week. He said, you know, it's been 5 years since his first time was bring it up. I think it's his middle name. But I was looking at the when I started my NFL prep, I was pulling up all of the depth charts and I'm like, who the fuck is Shaq Leonard? I was like, what happened to Darius Leonard? I'm looking and I don't see him. And I'm like, is this supposed to say Shaq Thompson? Like what? I was so confused for like 2 minutes. And I was like, oh wait, yeah, I forgot what I read that he now goes by Shaquille Leonard. But there's because there's another guy named Shaquille, linebacker in the NFL. And then I'm like, Leonard, I'm like, did I miss Darius Leonard getting traded? Did he retire? I was like, what the hell? I was so, but my mind was just couldn't wrap around looking at that name. Obviously, I was like my first day of cracking the NFL books back open too. But yeah, that was funny, but well pronounced on Alberto.
Thank you, sir. And if you had trouble with Leonard, don't look at the Saints wide receiver depth chart because they got some guy named Deontay Hardy now who was formerly known as Deontay Harris. So you got. When's the last time you had two names?
Oh, really?
Changes? Yeah. Deontay Harris is Deontay Hardy. Robbie Anderson is now ROBBIE instead of ROBBY.
I saw that.
So it's like if you have spreadsheets where you're like, you do lookups, which I have a ton of.
Scrapping,
murder. It's just not ideal. But let's talk about Raiders real quick because my whole kind of philosophy with this loaded AFC West is that I like you kind of mentioned, I think it's a lot closer than people think. The Raiders are actually my favorite team if you're going to invest in the AFC West, because I think they're going to be a quality team, you know, adding Devontae Adams, you know, adding Josh McDaniels at head coach. You know, they were pretty unlucky in terms of the injury. The O-line obviously is still, you know, a concern, which is why they're in the cellar. But, you know, I have the Raiders favored in 9 games. And, you know, that's already over their win total. And then I have them pick them in 2 more. So, but at the same time, I'm curious as your thoughts on this. You know, they have that red flag of major aggression candidate. You know, they only had 6.9 Pythagorean wins last year. They won 10 games. They got into the playoffs. So it's like I have these kind of competing notions of the Raiders. But I look at the roster. I like the fact that they should be able to throw the ball regardless of the offensive line. I think they got a good group of running backs. McDaniels is always good at using his backs. And I think, you know, on defense, they're going to be able to rush the passer. You know, you got Crosby and Chandler Jones. That's always a plus. And then, you know, Rock Ya-Sin is actually one of the better corners in the league last year. Hobbs is one of the better slot corners in the league. So, and now you don't have Gus Bradley there, who's just going to play the scheme that like certain teams are just going to obliterate. So like, I don't know, like I like the Raiders, but you know, obviously in this division and then, you know, the regression thing, it's kind of, I don't know. What do you think of the Raiders? Am I crazy or is this team maybe a little bit underrated?
I think so. I mean, they got added 2 star players who can really have an impact on both sides of the ball, in Jones and Adams, which is obviously going to have impact. But like rushing the passer and throwing the ball like weren't really the weaknesses of this team. So I'm still worried. The offensive line, the secondary linebacking room is still a major concern, man. Yeah, you mentioned it. They were extremely lucky all of last year. And if you just look, I mean, obviously they went, what did they go 6-2 and 7-2 1 possession games, but it's much deeper than that. If you just take a look at they went 7-2 in one score games. But they also played the COVID Browns roster. Remember that game? They played, I think Wentz had COVID when they played him. They played, let's take a look at, they played Brissett. They played Drew Lock and Nick Mullen when he was on the Browns. So they played a number of different backups as well. And they went 7-2 in one possession games. They were just lucky across the board. They won 3 more games than they were. Yeah. Their Pythagorean wins, man. So if you look historically, that is bad news. And the division got better. The Chargers got better. The Chiefs are going to be close, but I think they got a little worse. But the Broncos got better. The Chargers got much better. The AFC overall is better. And I have them with the 3rd hardest schedule in the NFL. So I project them at 8-7. The reason I don't hate you taking a flyer on them to win the division, because if the coaching upgrades, I think might be not incorporated into the market here from a scheme perspective. And then, if Jones and Adams just have monster years, this team could actually be better than last year, even though if they have some negative regression. Just because you were lucky last year doesn't mean you can't be lucky again this year, or doesn't mean you're going to be unlucky. Let's just throw that out there. We're just speaking in general terms. But the reason that I do kind of like it to win the division is that there is a chance that this division is just eating each other.
Yep.
Just the cannibalization. And it's just like the race to 10 wins to win it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Obviously the Raiders you'd have to say they're the 4th best team in the division, or the worst, to put another way. But I don't think the gap is quite as large. I think, just like all these other teams, I think, the Raiders have their strengths and weaknesses, and, being able to throw the ball and being able to pass rush. I think, if you had to choose some strengths, those would be the ones you choose. I think their secondary will be better. Obviously Abram we'll see if they can get more out of him. But, Moehrig has turned into a pretty good safety. Like I said, Rock Ya-Sin has been one of the better corners in the league, and Hobbs was very good last year. So it's not I don't think it's bottom 5.
I think you're giving Rock Ya-Sin a little bit too much credit, but
we'll see. He's it's funny. They kind of flip-flop with the Colts, but he's been up and down. But if he can build on what he's done how he played last year, I think he'll be good. Obviously he was a lot worse in 2020, and he was pretty solid in 2019. So, but regardless, I do think there's some upside. So that's how I would attack this division. Everyone's going to kind of make their case for who the best team in this division is, why you should bet the over for the Chiefs or the Chargers or the Broncos, whoever it might be. But I rather just take a flyer on the Raiders to win at 6.5 to 1. You could get some plus 700 out there as well. And hope that all these teams just kind of beat each other up, maybe get some injury luck. But that's how I'd kind of attack this division.
I don't hate it. I just wouldn't bet the Chiefs. And it's not even I'm hating on the Chiefs. The division is so good. I wouldn't take the favorite. And I think that they're not head and shoulders above. I don't think they're better than the Chargers. And Chargers out there, you can find 250 plus 250. That's plus 220, probably closer to right. But I actually think the Chargers should have better odds. But I don't hate the if I didn't bet the Chargers, I came close on taking a shot on the Raiders.